Hello everyone and welcome back to the sessions on strategic financial management. Friends, in this class of CA Final SFM, we are continuing with the topic derivatives and this is the 8th lecture on derivatives. Let me remind you, within derivatives we were in the part options and within which we were talking about option valuation. Let me give you a recap of what we have learnt in the earlier two sessions, that is during lecture number 6 and 7. We have learned everything about traditional models of option valuation. We have learned portfolio replication model, risk neutral model, binomial model. We have learned put call parity theory and even multi-period binomial model. In this class, we are going to deal with the most modern approach of option valuation, that is as per your textbook concept number 31, Black and Scholes model. So friends, you go to the derivative market today worldwide, in derivative markets across the world, you would find application of Black and Scholes model for valuation of call and put option. So obviously, like any other model, this model also has defined equations for valuation of call and valuation of put option. So here comes valuation of call option and valuation of put option through these two equations. Before I explain you these equations, let me give you one more important fact about Black and Scholes model. So like all other traditional models, the Black and Scholes model also had been designed for determining value of call options only. I repeat, like all other traditional models, Black and Scholes model also had been primarily designed for valuation of call options only. If you are willing to find out the value of put option, you observe this second equation, what you find over here. It is nothing but equation of put call parity theory. That means even Black and Scholes model is adopting put call parity theory equation for determining the value of put option. Therefore, if I am asking you to determine the value of put option through Black and Scholes model, you are going to follow the same earlier process, that you first apply Black and Scholes model and determine the value of call option, then using put call parity theory and the value of call option that you have determined, derive the value of put option. That means the second equation what you find over here is nothing but application of put call parity theory. That's all. The explanation of first equation, that is valuation of call option, is where we have to put our entire focus. Let us logically understand the application of that equation, how that equation is obtained, and then we will apply a lot of mathematical models to arrive at the calculations. So friends, let me remind you, this topic, Black and Scholes model, it has a lot of mathematical application, core mathematical application. There will be intermediary calculations involved. There will be application of probabilities, application of normal distribution. There will be application of continuous compounding. Lot of mathematical involvement, including use of natural logarithms. So over here, we are not going to go for deriving those typical mathematical formulas, but what our objective is to understand these two equations very well logically. The internal mathematical calculations, how it is derived. You go to Google and just type the search words derivation of Black and Scholes formula and you will be getting lots of content about the search result, and when you start exploring, you will find someone who is from pure mathematical background, who have learned mathematics a lot in their basic studies, they will have a chance to understand what is given. But you people who are from non-mathematical background, it's difficult for you to grab it. We don't even want it. We want to understand the core application of these two equations and therefore the logical derivation of these two equations. That is our objective. Let us do that first and then we come up with the mathematical application, calculations, and then solving questions through Black and Scholes model. So here comes the equation of Black and Scholes model. Let us try to understand Value of call option is S0 into n of D1 minus E into e raised to minus RT into n of D2. This is what you have to typically understand, because once you understand this equation, the other one is going to be simple, because that you have learnt earlier in the form of put call parity theory. Now, value of call option as typically understood, it is MP minus EP. Let us recollect what we have learned in past. Value of call option is always MP minus EP, provided that call option is being exercised. Because when a call option is not exercised, its value is simply 0, correct? When not exercised, when a call option is being lapsed, its value is 0. Its gross payoff or its intrinsic value is completely 0. But when exercised, what is the worth of a call option? It is prevailing market price minus exercise price. Now, what is the condition for exercising call option? Never forget, condition for exercising call option is always that market price should be greater than the exercise price. If market price is greater than the strike price, you will exercise the call option, and that time its value on maturity, I repeat, its value on maturity will be MP minus EP. That is what I have written in that second line. So, in the traditional models, what you have done, you have arrived at value of call option by end of the period, that is at maturity, by taking MP minus EP, and then you have dragged that value to its present value to arrive at the value of call option in present terms. Now friends, Black and Scholes model has a more direct approach. What Black and Scholes model does over here is, it directly considers the present values only. So, comparison of MP and EP is not going to be just MP minus EP. MP itself will be brought down to its present value, EP also will be brought down to its present value. Now, what is the present value of market price? Basically, if I say present value of market price is nothing but the present market price, and present market price is S0. On the other side, if I have to look into the exercise price, the exercise price is not applicable for today. It is exercise price which will be applicable on maturity, correct? If it is a price applicable at maturity, I want to bring it in today's terms, I have to simply find the present value of that exercise price. So, in place of MP minus EP, what we would do, we would take present value of these two components, and present value of MP is nothing but the spot price S0, and present value of exercise price, if you want to determine, you will take exercise price into e raised to minus RT. So, on top of that equation, when you find in the later part, that is E into e raised to minus RT, it is doing nothing but bringing the exercise price to its present value. So, both brought to their present value, and then you are going to take the difference. So, let me once again give an elaborate explanation. Please pay attention on the screen, and I bring some important facts in front of you. So, what do we find over here? MP, present value of MP is nothing but S0 minus EP. Instead of EP, we are taking E into e raised to minus RT. That means we have brought the exercise price to its present value. S0 already indicates the current market price. So, indeed in this equation, what we are doing is still MP minus EP, but both of these values are in today's terms, and therefore, value of call option what you will get will be directly in today's terms. That is one thing. But friends, mind it, when I have explained this equation, what did I say? Value of call option will be MP minus EP when the call option is exercised. But do you think always the call option will be exercised? Answer is no. Call option may not be exercised always. That means we will have to look into the probability of these prices becoming effective. So, let me explain now. N of D1 is nothing but probability of S0 becoming effective. N of D2 is probability of exercise price becoming effective. We are taking again the same thing, S0 minus E into e raised to minus RT, the same thing, but to these two terms we are going to multiply N of D1 as the probability for S0 and N of D2 as probability of present value of exercise price. As a result, n of d1 got multiplied over here, n of d2 gets multiplied over here, and finally you arrive at this equation. Alright friends, now going back to from where we started, you focus on this equation. This is what we have just understood, and Vp equals to, that is value of put option equals to value of call option plus present value of exercise price minus current market price. This is what we have learned as a put call parity theory equation, through which you will derive the value of put option. That means to obtain the value of put option, first you find the value of call option, apply put call parity theory, and finally derive the value of put option. Now, to calculate D1 and D2, we have a mathematical approach. So there is a formula for calculating D1. I will be explaining you application of this formula while we are dealing with questions, so that you understand it better. So D1 and D2 calculated this way. So don't bother about understanding these things now. I will explain you these formulas when we are solving questions. Let us now do one thing. If you have to write up a solution of any question, you would obviously start with writing up these equations, and you will define all the variables. That is, Vp is value of put option, Vc is value of call option, Ln is natural log, S0 is present market price of share, E stands for exercise price, T is time remaining for maturity in years, R stands for risk-free interest rate based on continuous compounding, sigma is the standard deviation of the share price, and N stands for cumulative area under normal curve. So friends, understanding all these variables also will be part of your analysis and solving questions. So let us do one thing. To understand the whole matter, how to apply, let us begin with questions. And in this order, let us begin with question number 84. Let us first read this question. Present market price of share is given as 415. A 3-month call option is available at an exercise price of rupees 400. The continuously compounded risk-free interest rate is 5% per annum. Volatility, that is standard deviation of the share price, is given as 22% or 0.22. Using Black and Scholes model, determine the value of call option and put option. So friends, when you have to begin solving a question, what you need to do first is, in your solution you would write up the equation for valuing the call option and the put call parity theory equation, through which you will be determining the value of put option. Then you have to write what is the value of D1, and as I told you, don't bother about understanding this formula right now for D1, but we will be understanding this when we apply while solving this question. Let us also do one thing. All the variables used in these equations and formulas, let us define all these variables, what Vp stands for, what Vc stands for. Ln stands for natural log, S0 is the present market price of the share, which is given as 415, E stands for exercise price, which is rupees 400, and T stands for time remaining for maturity, expressed in terms of number of years. Because the maturity of the option is falling due after 3 months, we would express that as 3 by 12 years, that is 0.25 year. R stands for risk-free interest rate based on continuous compounding, which is given as 5% per annum. Sigma stands for standard deviation of the share price, that is 0.22 or 22%, and N stands for cumulative area under normal curve. Let me tell you one thing very clearly, writing up all those equations, formulas and description of all these variables, it must be forming part of your solution. Now let us truly begin with the solution. So definitely what you have written is forming part of solution, but the step by step process that we have to apply begins from here. Step 1, the first step will be to determine D1. So though you have already written the formula of D1, you need not write up the formula again, but now let me explain what exactly is this D1. So friends, look into one thing. This D1 calculation, to remember this formula, it's very simple. you see this ln of S0 upon E is the first term. R plus 0.5 into sigma square into T is the second term, and sigma into square root of T is the third term. So it is this way, term number 1 plus term number 2 divided by term number 3. So let us begin understanding each of these three terms. The first term, it is natural log of this ratio S0 by E. So to remember this term, it's very easy. Because you want market price minus exercise price effect, before taking the log, it should always be S0 upon E. So the ratio will be the current market price divided by exercise price, and whatever ratio you get, you take the natural log of that. Now let me explain one more thing. Natural log is the log with the base of E. When I say log with the base of E, it is the same E which is used for continuous compounding and discounting. Alright, so the first term will be natural log of S0 upon E. S0 is given to you as a 415 and exercise price is rupees 400. So what you will do is rupees 415 divide by rupees 400, whatever you get, you will take natural log of that ratio. The natural log table is given at the back of your book. You may refer the table and derive the value, and in examination most of the times the value of ln for that ratio would be given in the question itself. Now over here, the second term, I would suggest you to understand the second term simply as R into T. You see here R and T, so it is R into T. But when we refer R is basically a risk-free rate based on continuous compounding. What we are trying to do is we are making adjustment of risk to this risk-free rate before you multiply that with T. So what is the risk adjustment that you have to make? You consider sigma square as nothing but variance, and you are taking 0.5 into variance. That means you are considering half of the variance. So half of the variance is being added to the risk-free rate, and then the risk adjusted rate finally gets multiplied to T. In the denominator, it is sigma into square root of T. So once you identify what are all these values, let us plot them into your calculation. So 415 divided by 400 plus rate of interest on continuous compounding basis, which is representing risk-free rate, is given as 0.05. Now standard deviation is 0.22. We want variance, so we have taken squared value of 0.22, but we don't want the complete variance, we want half of the variance. So 0.5 multiplied to variance, this will give you the risk adjustment to this risk-free rate. Once the risk-free rate is adjusted with the degree of risk, this whole thing within the bracket becomes the risk adjusted rate, and that gets multiplied to the time, that is 0.25 years. And in the denominator we have to take sigma into square root of T. Sigma is 0.22, square root of T is square root of 0.25. Whenever you are applying this formula, this T must represent the time in years. So let us move ahead and make up these calculations. So when you apply 415 by 400, you get something which is being rounded off to just two places after decimal. So it is ln of 1.04. Over here 0.5 into 0.22 squared will give you 0.0242, which will get added to 0.05, and as I told you, to make it as a risk adjusted rate and then multiply it to the time, that is 0.25, and in the denominator it is 0.22 multiplied by square root of 0.25, that gives you 0.5. So now looking at the table given at the back of your book, you find ln of 1.04. So you look into ln of x, where the value of x should be 1.04. What you get is 0.03922. Solving this part, that is 0.05 plus 0.0242 multiplied by 0.25 will give you 0.01855, and 0.22 multiplied by 0.5 will give you obviously 0.11, and when you solve it you get D1 equals to 0.5252. I would recommend that D1 value also should be rounded off in just 2 places after decimal, so let it be simply 0.53. Now D2 calculation is further very simple. It is D1 minus sigma into square root of t. Now sigma into square root of t was the denominator for computing D1. That same thing what you get in the denominator over here, that is 0.11, should be subtracted from the value of D1 to arrive at D2. So D2 will be 0.53 minus 0.11, and what you get is D2 equals to 0.42. Alright friends, so let us move ahead and deal with the most important step in this Black and Scholes model, that is determining n of D1. Now this is something that I want you to give your 100% attention. This step, if you understand, the remaining part of the calculation is easy going. So what you find is application of normal distribution. So what you got as the values of D1 and D2, through normal distribution we will identify that as a Z value. So I would say D1 value what you got was 0.53. Look into this curve, correct? This is called standard normal curve. People also call this as a bell curve. It is in the shape of the bell, right? This curve is symmetric to the center. This is 0 as the center, and on its right side you have positive values, on its left side you have negative values. Let me tell you friends, the values what you find over here, correct, on this number line, this represent the values of Z. Now Z value can reach from minus infinite to plus infinite, there is no limit. But have you noticed one thing? I have restricted the values from minus 4 to plus 4 only. So the curve continues thereafter as well, but the area that will be found under the normal curve beyond this minus 4 and plus 4 will be negligible area. Now what does that area represent? That area represents probabilities. So if I find the overall area under this bounded region, that total area represents 1. If that total area represents 1 and the curve is symmetric to the center which is 0, do you understand, this whole area, this bounded region will have area of 0.5. Likewise this will also have area of 0.5. Now if this is the center of the curve, the extreme left and extreme right are identified as left and right tails of this curve. So left tail over here and right tail over here. Left tail with negative values of Z and right tail with positive values of Z. We would want to plot that Z value which we have identified as D1. So D1 what we have identified in the first working note, the first step, it was 0.53 as D1. Obviously 0.53 was a positive value, it will come to the positive side between 0 and 1. Now what we have to do, from 0.53, that is from this line till extreme left end to the extreme left tail, whatever is the area in this curve is going to represent the probability, and that will give you n of D1. That means if we can calculate this whole area, we will be getting that straight away as value of n of D1. Now for that you have to refer Z table. Again Z table is given at the back of your book. So friends, what I would want you to do is refer Z table, and you would first find the area given over there is from 0 to Z. So area from 0 to Z, this shaded area, this part, this patch of area will be the area under normal curve from 0 to Z. So let us identify from the Z table, and we would write up a line below this as area under normal curve for D1 equal to Z, which is 0.53, is given as 0.2019. So friends, how do you refer Z table? Very simple. In the Z table you will be finding lots of rows and columns. So refer the row with numbering as 0.5 and refer the column as 0.03. So the row which has title of 0.5 and the column that has title of 0.03, the junction of that row and column will give you the Z value as 0.53, and at that stage the area under normal curve from 0 to Z is given as 0.2019. Now friends, we don't want just the area of this strip, we want this whole area, correct? We want this whole area. Now to find that, it is very simple, correct? This area value will be 0.5. I have explained you already, because the whole area under the normal curve is 1 and the curve being symmetric to the center, the value of that area to the left side from 0 to the extreme left will be 0.5. So let us mention that line as well. Area under normal curve from Z equal to 0 to extreme left tail is 0.5. So what we have now is we want this shaded area region, this whole red region, and that will be 0 to Z area, correct? 0 to Z, that is this strip plus this whole area, that means 0.2019 plus 0.5 will give you area of this entire shaded region. So what we get is cumulative area for D1 equals to 0.53 will be aggregate of these two, which is 0.7019, and you may conclude that therefore N of D1 is 0.7019. Alright friends, let us move ahead and make a similar calculation, that is determine N of D2. Now this is going to be exactly similar, so I don't have to explain it again. So it's again the bell curve, and we will now plot value of D2 as 0.42. That means this time Z represents 0.42 and the objective is similar. We would first find the area of this strip, that is from 0 to Z. So this strip area will be given in the Z table. We would write area under normal curve for D2 equals to Z, that is equal to 0.42, is given as 0.1628. But we don't want just the area of this strip, we want the entire area from this line 0.42 to extreme left tail, and that means this shaded region as well. So the area of this shaded region, this part will be 0.5. Why? Because I have explained you the curve is symmetric to the center, and from the center the area to the extreme left tail will be half of the total area, that is simply 0.5. So what we get is area under normal curve from Z equal to 0, that is from the center to the extreme left tail, is 0.5. So this whole shaded region with red color will give you cumulative area for D2 equals to 0.42, which will be 0.5 plus 0.1628, the aggregate of these two, correct? And what you get is 0.6628, and what you may conclude that N of D2 is 0.6628. Let us move ahead and deal with the later steps. Once you got N of D1 and N of D2, you are ready to apply this equation. This is the basic equation, that is value of call option. This equation you have already written in your solution earlier. So now you may just put up the values. S0 is 415, N of D1 you got as 0.7019, E is rupees 400, e raised to minus RT will be e raised to negative 0.05 into 3 by 12 into N of D2. N of D2 is 0.6628. So when we apply the calculation, what we get? 415 into 0.7019 will give you 291.29, and over here e raised to this whole thing will basically be rounded off to e raised to negative 0.01, correct? And when you look into the table, e raised to negative 0.01 will have value of 0.99005, and 400 into 0.99005 into 0.6628, this whole thing when subtracted from 291.29 will give you value of call option finally as 28.81. Step 6 will be using put call parity theory, determine the value of put option. So here is the equation of put call parity theory, that is value of call option plus present value of exercise price minus the current market price. So value of call option we just got as 28.81. Present value of exercise price will be 400 into e raised to minus RT, that is again e raised to negative 0.01, which we will again get as 0.99005, and from this whole thing subtract 415. So what we finally get is 28.81 plus 400 into 0.99005 minus 415. When you solve it, you get value of put option as rupees 9.83. Let us move ahead and take up another similar question. Question number 85. Let us read what's given over here. We would find a similar kind of question. A 6-month call option is available at a strike price of rupees 45. Current market price of the share is rupees 40. The continuously compounded risk-free interest rate is 10% per annum. Standard deviation of the share price is 45%. Using Black and Scholes model, determine the value of call option and put option. So now we have to determine the value of call and put option over here as well. So exactly similar type of question, but there is one small change that I would want you to notice. Look into one thing. The current market price this time is given as 40 and the call option exercise price is given as 45. In the earlier question, the current market price was higher than the exercise price. This time the current market price is lower than the exercise price. As a result, what will be its impact in the solution? Let us try to observe. But before we put up the solution, as I have told you, you should always include writing this content and you would define all the variables. Alright friends, let us move ahead and define all the variables with the values given in the question. So we have defined what is VP, what is VC. Ln stands for natural log. S0 is the present market price of the share, which is rupees 40. E is the exercise price, which is rupees 45. T is time remaining for maturity, which is half year, correct? And risk-free interest rate based on continuous compounding is given as 10% per annum. Sigma, that is standard deviation of share price, is given as 45% or 0.45, and N stands for the cumulative area under the normal curve. Alright friends, let us move ahead and start putting up the solution step by step. So the first step you know very well, it is determining D1. D1 formula you have already written. So this time I am not going to help you much with the calculations. You should on your own try calculating the stuff. So I am going to give you time and you should work out the calculations. So friends, this time this part ln of S0 by E, you would find S0 is lower than E in this given case, correct? As a result, when you apply natural log of something which is less than 1, the result will be negative. So you will be getting this part as a negative, that is for sure. So let us check the first term for computing D1, that is ln of 40 by 45 will give you negative 0.1165 plus this term is going to give you 0.10063 and the denominator over here is 0.3182. Finally, the D1 value what you get is negative 0.05, and for determining D2, this is very simple. The denominator part should be subtracted from D1 value, that is from negative 0.05 subtract 0.32, and what you get is D2 as negative 0.37. So friends, this is something different in this question where D1 and D2 both values you got negative. So impact of this, what will be the impact of this on your n of D1 and n of D2 calculation is worth understanding. Alright friends, let us move ahead and deal with the third step, that is determining n of D1. Now again carefully understand this step. This time D1 value is negative. So when you are plotting the bell curve, the negative value will come on the left of the 0, correct? So we have this shaded region from negative 0.05 to 0, okay? This part we have to find the area. Unfortunately, in Z table you will never get negative values of Z, but we don't have to worry because the curve is symmetric to the center. we want value from, that is area from 0 to negative 0.05, but area from 0 to positive 0.05 will also be matching with this because of the symmetric nature of the curve. As a result, what we write is area under normal curve for z equal to 0.05 is given as 0.0199. Now the area that we are looking for is not this area, but from D1 till extreme left tail, that is this part of area only, this part only, not this small thin strip over here. So this whole part from 0 to the extreme left tail, this whole area will be 0.5, but we want only from negative 0.05 to extreme left tail, we want only this area. So friends, from 0 to extreme left tail is 0.5, from 0 to negative 0.05 the area is 0.0199. So the area of this shaded region will be 0.5 minus 0.0199. So from this whole area of 0.5 we are subtracting the area of this small strip, and what we get is 0.4801, concluding that n of d1 is 0.4801. Alright friends, moving ahead and dealing with the next step, that is step 4, determining n of d2. So exactly the same way, same thing. This time again d2 is also negative. So d2 comes again to the left side of 0 and d2 value is a negative 0.37. So this part, the shaded part over here, this we will be obtaining from the Z table. As I told you that this region from Z table, if you refer, Z does not have negative values, that means in the Z table you will not find negative values of Z plotted, but we have not to worry because the curve is symmetric to the center. Area from 0 to 0.37 will be same as area of 0 to negative 0.37 what we have shaded over here, and that area is given as 0.1433 referring to the Z table. What we want is the area from d2 equals to negative 0.37 to the extreme left, and we know one thing, that area from 0 to extreme left tail will be 0.5. So from 0.5 we are going to subtract 0.1433 to obtain the area of this region, that is this red region. So from 0.5 you are going to subtract 0.1433, and finally what you get is n of d2 equals to 0.3557. Alright friends, let us move ahead and calculate the value of call and put option, the last two steps. And here I don't have to give you any explanation. You have learned how to apply the calculations through this equation of call option. So through the values of n of d1 and n of d2 that we have just obtained, let us put up these values in the equation and determine value of call option as 3.98, and the last step will be using put call parity theory we are going to determine the value of put option, and this time the value of put option comes to 6.79. What you find is value of put option is higher than value of call option in this scenario. I would recommend you one thing, revise and practice this concept very well. You have a lot of questions for practice given in your textbook. Definitely solve all of them for a good practice of this concept. Let us declare this as end of part 8. Thank you so much for attending this class.